Hey, what's up, stock compounders? Brad here. So today we're going to talk about the 14th bias in Charlie Munger's Psychology of Human Misjudgment series. And that 14th bias or tendency is Deprival-Superreaction Tendency. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to read an excerpt from Poor Charlie's Almanack on this tendency. And then we're going to go over to our favorite AI and go a little bit deeper. Ask it some questions about Deprival-Superreaction Tendency. So, from Poor Charlie's Almanack. The quantity of man's pleasure from a $10 gain does not exactly match the quantity of his displeasure from a $10 loss. That is, the loss seems to hurt much more than the gain seems to help. Moreover, if a man almost gets something he greatly wants and has it jerked away from him at the last moment, he will react much as if he had long owned the reward and had it jerked away. I include the natural human reactions to both kinds of loss experience, the loss of the possessed reward and the loss of the almost possessed reward, under one description: Deprival-Superreaction Tendency. In displaying Deprival-Superreaction Tendency, man frequently incurs disadvantage by misframing his problems. He will often compare what is near instead of what really matters. For instance, a man with 10 million in his brokerage account will often be extremely irritated by the accidental loss of a $100 bill out of the $300 in his wallet. The Mungers once owned a tame and good-natured dog that displayed the canine version of Deprival-Superreaction Tendency. There was only one way to get bitten by this dog, and that was to try and take some food away from him after he already had it in his mouth. If you did that, this friendly dog would automatically bite. He couldn't help it. Nothing could be more stupid than for the dog to bite his master, but the dog couldn't help being foolish. He had an automatic Deprival-Superreaction Tendency in his nature. Humans are much the same as this Munger dog. A man ordinarily reacts with irrational intensity to even a small loss or threatened loss of property, love, friendship, dominated territory, opportunity, status, or any other valued thing. As a natural result, bureaucratic infighting over the threatened loss of dominated territory often causes immense damage to an institution as a whole. Even a 1-degree loss from a 180-degree view, okay, we're talking about real estate, will sometime create enough Deprival-Superreaction Tendency to turn a neighbor into an enemy. As I once observed when I bought a house from one of two neighbors locked into hatred by a tiny tree newly installed by one of them. Deprival-Superreaction Tendency has ghastly effects in labor relations. Most of the deaths in the labor strife that occurred before World War I came when employers tried to reduce wages. Nowadays, we see fewer deaths and more occasions when whole companies disappear, as competition requires either takeaways from labor, which it will not consent to, or death of a business. Deprival-Superreaction Tendency is also a huge contributor to ruin from compulsion to gamble. First, it causes the gambler to have a passion to get even once he has suffered a loss, and the passion grows with the loss. Second, the most addictive forms of gambling provide a lot of near misses, and each one triggers Deprival-Superreaction Tendency. Each slot machine creator some slot machine creators are vicious in exploiting this weakness of man. Electronic machines enable these creators to produce a lot of meaningless bar-lemon results that greatly increase play by fools who think they have very nearly won large rewards. Deprival-Superreaction Tendency often does much damage to man in open outcry auctions. The social proof that we will next consider tends to convince man that the last price from another bidder was reasonable. And then Deprival-Superreaction Tendency prompts him strongly to top the last bid. The best antidote to being thus triggered into paying foolish prices at open outcry auctions is the simple Buffett practice. Don't go to such auctions. Deprival-Superreaction Tendency and inconsistency avoidance tendency often join to cause one form of business failure. In this form of ruin, a man gradually uses up all his good assets in a fruitless attempt to rescue a big venture going bad. One of the best antidotes to this folly is good poker skill learned young. The teaching value of poker demonstrates that not all effective teaching occurs on a standard academic path. So that's what I wanted to share from Poor Charlie's Almanack on Deprival-Superreaction Tendency. Let's jump into Chat GPT-4 to learn a little bit more. So I asked Chat GPT-4, define Deprival-Superreaction Tendency, provide examples on how it can mislead, and offer antidotes for how to neutralize it, right? How to not be misled, at least reduce our tendency to being misled. Deprival-Superreaction Tendency refers to a psychological bias where people are more sensitive to losses or perceived losses than they are to equivalent gains. This tendency leads individuals to overreact when facing a potential loss or when they are deprived of something they value or perceive to be theirs. The term was coined by Charlie Munger, a well-known investor and partner of Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway. Real quick, before we go on, I just want to recount a situation where I really felt the pull of this tendency. So I used to manage a moving company in Madison, Wisconsin. One day, the owner pulled me aside and he fired me. Okay? Now, some of my identity was kind of wrapped up in being the manager, the general manager of this moving company. So the feeling is that something got ripped away from me, right? I actually felt the deprival super reaction that was occurring because of that situation. Even though it wasn't mine, it wasn't my business, but I had come to believe, this role is mine, right? And so that stung. Moving along, examples of Deprival-Superreaction Tendency. Loss aversion in investments. Investors might hold on to losing stocks longer than they should due to the fear of realizing a loss. They may also sell winning stocks too quickly to avoid the possibility of future losses, right? To lock in gains, even if the stocks have strong potential for growth, right? The business is as strong as ever, and yet you want to prevent loss by locking in that sale. 2, the endowment effect. People often overvalue objects they already own, leading them to demand more to give up the object than they would be willing to pay to acquire it. For example, a person may not want to sell their used car for less than $10,000, but they would never pay $10,000 for the same car if they didn't already own it. Number 3, sunk cost fallacy. Individuals or businesses may continue to invest in a project even when it's clear that the project is failing, simply because they have already invested a significant amount of time or money into it. This can lead to further losses and wasted resources. This, also kind of highlights inconsistency avoidance tendency, right? These two are pretty closely related, as we may see. We already read some of that out of Poor Charlie's Almanack. So those are some examples of how Deprival-Superreaction Tendency can materialize. Let's look at some antidotes to neutralize this tendency. 1, awareness. Recognize and understand this psychological bias, which is what we're doing, which can help you to identify when it may be influencing your decisions. Acknowledging the tendency will allow you to consciously assess situations more objectively. So just being aware of it can help neutralize it. 2, focus on the bigger picture. Shift your perspective to consider the long-term consequences of decisions rather than just the immediate potential losses or gains. This can help you make more informed decisions that are better aligned with your long-term goals. Number 3, quantitative analysis. Use objective data and statistical analysis to evaluate decisions, rather than relying solely on your emotions or intuition. By analyzing the numbers and considering probabilities, you can make better informed choices. So we talked about this in the last video as well, the last bias we covered. Looking at probabilities and expected value, right, based on those probabilities, based on the data. Number 4, seek alternative perspectives. Consult with others, especially those who have different viewpoints or expertise, to gain additional insights and uncover potential biases in your decision-making process. You guys, a lot of these come up over and over for a lot of the biases, a lot of the tendencies that we're covering in Poor Charlie's Almanack. It'll be interesting when we get to the end to actually map the antidotes for each of these tendencies and how often each of those antidotes are coming up, which is great. If there's only, a dozen or so antidotes that apply to all of these tendencies, it should be, very focused work on loosening the grip that these biases have. Number 5, embrace a learning mindset. Accept that not all decisions will lead to positive outcomes, and focus on learning from both successes and failures. This can help you develop resilience and better decision-making skills over time. Okay? I forget the quote. Monish Pabrai was talking about how he was talking about failure and how, it's not really failure if you can take the lessons from it, right? And propel yourself on to success. I'll have to try to dig up that quote. It's quite powerful. But yeah, be open to failure, because failure really provides incredible learning opportunities. So that's it, guys. Just wanted to share all of this information on Deprival-Superreaction Tendency. And thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.